Okay, so I've added a lot of things to the website, changed a lot of stuff, but I found one source that was really awesome. But just going here, this is on the very bottom where I talk about descendants of Joseph Smith. And one of my friends just suggested I throw those pictures on there because I think that was what really got me a lot of attention in 2018, because I had that on the main page. And of course with here, I'm really trying to put everything I can here that I find to be relevant. And so it's one really long page. But it's got pictures of Joseph Smith III, born in 1832. As you know, they did get Julia Murdoch Smith, and they adopted her and her brother, who he died in March 1832 with a mobbing. So when he was born, he did have, and throughout adulthood, he did have an older adopted sister, Julia Murdoch Smith. But he was the first born son of Joseph and Emma to survive, because in 1828 they did give birth to a boy that died, and then in 1831 in April she gave birth to twins that died in childbirth. So she just kept having kids that died. And if you want to, having studied EDS, because I'm getting checked out for different connective tissue disorders, looking at Emma's tiny little nose and just a lot of her facial features, it just almost looks textbook like vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I really wonder, and she lived to be almost 80, but I really wonder if she had some form of that. Just looking at pictures of her, just saying, if you wonder why she kept losing kids, they were not killing their babies. Their babies died. And a lot of times if you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, you do have premature children. But this was the first baby, and he survived, and he lived till 1914. 1832 to 1914. This was done in Sandwich, Illinois, sometime in the 1860s. That's an 1860s carte de visite. This, I believe, was from a daguerreotype, so I think he was younger. I think it's the youngest picture of him. I think he's a little bit older there. Don't know how old he is there. But he's changed quite a bit from there to there. But compared to the dad, I think he definitely has those really straight eyebrows. Excuse me, but he does seem to take after sort of the Hale side of the family, as people have said, because his eyes look like Emma. They described Emma's eyes as almost so dark brown, they're almost black, and her hair was black. So I think he kind of inherited more of those traits. And then Frederick, really not the best picture, but he died, I think he was 25. And then this is alleged to be him, I'm not sure, but we do know that's him. I know that's Joseph Smith III. This back row throws me as I look at their pictures. I think that's supposed to be Alexander, but that doesn't look like Alexander's eyebrows. That doesn't look like David Hiram. Or that doesn't look like Alexander, that doesn't look like David Hiram. But they state that's who those people are. He did have other children. This Lucian Foster, who married Emma about 3 years after Joseph Smith died. But looking at him, his eyebrows look pretty arched, whereas Joseph's eyebrows, from my picture that I think is him, his eyebrows look really straight. But his nose does look pretty similar, I think, from straight on. And his ears do look like they stick out. And he's just covering it with his hair, because that was the Western style to grow their hair. So they're all the sons really seem to just, you can't see his ears at all, because that hair is just covering. And if that's Alexander, I think Alexander comes next. Just really, it could be. It's just hard to tell. It's a little bit of a strange picture, and he tends to often have, a lot of them grew beards and mustaches. He does look like he had lighter eyes, so maybe blue eyes. And I actually have a friend that her and her husband have brown eyes, and they had a daughter with blonde hair and blue eyes. Even though they both had brown hair and brown eyes. It happens. So some of the boys did get lighter colored eyes. That is Alex. That is David Hiram. David Hiram, I think I can really see similar to my picture because of that the straight eyebrows and the nose and that little bit longer chin, but it doesn't really not as round, not protruding as much, whereas his kind of comes out a little bit more. A lot of historians think he looked the most like Joseph. Of course, we don't have verified pictures of him yet, so that's just going off the death mask and paintings profile mostly. Maybe the forward-facing painting. I don't know why a lot of historians claim that he does. His ears didn't stick out as much, but David Hiram's, they did, you'll see that. But yeah, there's Alex. Here's my picture. I see a little bit, especially this eye and that eye. And the eye just kind of has a slant in these pictures. And Emma's eyes kind of did too, but these are very hooded, much heavier eyelids. And so that's Alex, and then David Hiram was born 1844. And so there's quite an age difference from 1838. That's about 6 years. But they lost 2 children. When Don Carlos lived to be a year old, and just Sid's just died as a baby, like in the crib, just sudden infant death syndrome. So, which was really, really sad and just very heartbreaking. So a week before Emma died, she had a dream that Joseph came to her and had Don Carlos in a bassinet and just said, "Come on, let's go. Here's your babies." She's like, "Where are the rest of mine? Where are the rest of my children?" He's like, "Just be patient." And I don't know, it's just a really beautiful and tear-jerking. And then she died very soon after that dream. So we do believe that we live and get to, if you make certain covenants in the temple, that you can be resurrected and raise children that died when they were babies. So that is a doctrine that we believe. And his eyebrows look really straight. Someone said he was 16 here. He doesn't look super healthy there. I think he just sort of had a mental health break when he was older. And whether it was health related or really full on mental health, they kind of wondered if it was a blood sugar thing. But he doesn't look super healthy there. But that was a drawing of him done by Frederick Piercy when he was a kid, and he was becoming an artist. And so that's why I think of any artist to bond with them, I've heard of maybe, well, here's this painting of my husband. And Frederick Piercy copied the forward-facing painting, also copied, Maudsley's artwork. But then you suddenly get this one picture that looks so much like my picture with no context. And I'm like, that's nothing like the other artwork he copied. He tended to just copy what he saw, which is a sign of a good artist. You're drawing what you're seeing. You're not drawing symbolically. And then we got dropped down to here that one of the great-great-granddaughters of Joseph Smith, I don't want to say her name, but she contacted me and was interested in my picture for certain reasons, and explained why she thought that, but she really was impressed by this picture of her grandfather. I need to throw in another picture of him when he was older. But I found this one of him when he was younger, and you can see those ears protrude. And it's so interesting that this person, when I contacted the Church History Museum, hundreds of people work there, so it wasn't our archivist that was talking to one specific person in the Joseph Smith Papers team. And he was sending my emails to him and then sending me his email, so he wouldn't even talk to me directly. But he did argue for a week about earlobes and Joseph's ears sticking out. And he was really adamant that Maudsley painted him with his ears stuck to his head, that you could really tell. Like, you can't tell this guy has ears that protrude. They don't really look like they're protruding. This is a profile of him. But when he's faced forward, you can really see what they protrude. And you might be able to see some indication if his head was turned a little bit more. I don't know. But even me, my ears stick out. I see pictures of me from the side and then from the front where they look like they're sticking out, So I thought that was interesting. His nose, I think, definitely I can see, and just those eyes and that chin, definitely. I do see a lot of the similarities. And then this is the sister. This is Catherine, who is younger. born in 1813. Smith, she was Salisbury, and then he died, and then she became younger. I didn't realize. Joseph Smith papers, they put her as younger, and I always thought, put up my website, it was Salisbury, because that's what most people talked about, was her marriage with that last name for most of her life, but anyway. And then Lucy Smith Milliken, born in 1821. So Joseph Smith was like almost an adult when she was born, but she was very, very young. So almost her whole life was the church. And then the sisters just stayed in Illinois. And I can definitely see some similarities with the eyes. The ears do stick out a little bit. Catherine's ears look so similar to my picture, although she's like about 80 at this point, but I don't know. And I would think her eyes are so deep set, I almost think they look more like how I'd imagine Hiram's eyes to look, but I just don't know. I'm just going off paintings in the death mask. But and I heard that she was 60 at this point, so she looks really, really good for being 60. So I don't think they really cared to get their picture taken when they were younger. They also may not, just probably didn't have the money, and probably didn't have that many photographers in their farming towns. So they didn't even, like, Nauvoo was like a big city, and so his sisters actually lived in much smaller towns farther away, and they just didn't leave. It was really Nauvoo that went under attack in 1844, 45, 46, so. But one new thing, I'll show you where this is, that I found a really cool link. Because I reviewed basically my website earlier. And so my whole section on this, because it is an issue. Okay, this is from the Saints Herald, and it's August, I think, 15th, 1879, because it was 1879 in July that Joseph Smith III copyrighted this. That they state is just a copy of that painting. And so in the Saints Herald, we can just zoom in and read it here. And so he was the editor. Joseph Smith III was the editor of the Saints Herald, which was the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints newspaper in Plano. And that's why he was running it from 1866 to 1881. And I think he still was the editor and still writing for it, but he left Plano. And I think that everything just moved to Iowa and then eventually to Missouri. So, but 1879, he's still in Plano. And so this is basically Joseph Smith III writing this. So it's pictures of Joseph the Martyr. It says we have now on hand subject, and so they just talk about a photograph of the only authentic front view painting of Joseph Smith, the Martyr. They just say Joseph the Martyr, because Joseph Smith III, they don't really make a distinction as you're reading this, but they get really specific that it was painted by someone from New York when Joseph Smith was 36 years old. So Joseph Smith was born in December 23rd, 1805. And so December 1842, he turned 37. So all of 1842 in September, Joseph Smith was 36. So this is 1879. I think Joseph Smith III was a lot younger and a lot more able. I mean, Emma had still been alive earlier that year. And she might have written down, I imagine her saying, "This is your father," when he was 36. So he might have just known my dad was 36. Because he says something different in 1910. He says 1843. His father, even in January 1843, he was 37. He had just turned 37. So when he was 36, that was 1842. Because David Rogers of New York painted Joseph and his brothers, so he does state with brothers, with David Rogers, 4 days. And here's the bio. And so we're talking about this painting. Queen of Christ owns this now. It matches perfectly I mean, just slight differences, but not enough to just of the Library of Congress and of Carter's picture. And David Rogers is from New York. So this is his biography in the Joseph Smith papers, and they have all their sources there. There's all their sources if you're doubting anything. But yeah, Suffolk, New York. Lives in New York City in 1827. And then he's baptized in 41. And then he's ordained an elder. And then he's in Nauvoo in 1842. In September, paints Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. So Joseph Smith III in 1910. We have to scroll up here. He's a lot older at this point. He only lives 4 more years. And so he lived to be, I think, 82. So he's 78 because he dies in 1814, something like that. So he's somewhere around 78. Or turning 78. Anyway, he's criticizing another painting, and I don't go into all that, but I don't post all that, but I talk about it in a lot of videos. But he talks about an authentic oil painting, which is, where did I just click on it? There we go. This is what he's talking about. He's calling this the authentic oil painting. Painted by the artist that painted one of my uncle Hiram Smith. That's David Rogers. Because they state that they verified he painted Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. So Joseph Smith III knows he painted his father and his brother. Around 1843, he's off because his dad was 37. He says dad was 36, which lines up with David Rogers. Is sustained in its characteristic likeness. He doesn't say it's based on a daguerreotype. It's just sustained by the likeness by the daguerreotype in our possession. So they're looking at the daguerreotype and going, I don't know, I think his eyebrow looked a little bit more like this, and just kind of, this painting might have been really cracked. She didn't let anyone copy it. She probably didn't let anyone touch it until, from 1842 until 1879. That's a long time, because usually you need to kind of protect the painting and do certain things. So when you look at the painting here, it doesn't look cracked at all. You might see a little bit right there, but it looks really well kept. And so very likely someone repainted over all of it. But then they might have also said, oh no, I accidentally got rid of some of the wrinkles on his face. Well, we have a daguerreotype. We just kind of help you to know that my dad sort of had a deep wrinkle there. And this. But they weren't creating a new painting. Okay, this is how you've got the Joseph Smith papers stating this is done by David Rogers in 1842. And so then I realized Kim Marshall was sort of complaining in one of her blogs, but she does such a good job. But she said that they take this as evidence that it was just a photograph of the painting, which it was. But they did take the daguerreotype and look at it. It just wasn't, I think, in a state that they could copy it. I think maybe in 1860, take the glass off, I think it just went bad. And I've said that 100 times. But having seen Emma Smith's 1845 daguerreotype and how badly darkened it is, and how it's very obvious that they took the plate off when they did the very clear carte de visite of her, because so this turned out really clear, way clear. But when you look at this is the carte de visite that I've looked at of this. It looks like 1880, even later, and it just not very clear at all. The only one clear one I found is of that one. And then it just gets even worse right here. But this is, I believe, the technique where they sort of paint, like they copy the painting, but then they paint over it and copy that. It was some technique where they paint over. I can't remember what that is exactly called. So it looks slightly different. I mean, it looks very different than the original. It looks a lot more flat, but it matches this perfectly. It just is that it's just another copy of that painting. So some people thought that's what, this was. That same type of thing, but it doesn't match the death mask. It really, really doesn't. The eyebrows don't match the death mask. Although I see some similarities between that and my picture. But that's all I have for you today. So yeah, this was exciting, but I don't think this is evidence that there wasn't a daguerreotype. I already knew he didn't copy the daguerreotype and sell it. I don't think, not because he didn't have a picture of his dad. I think he did. It couldn't copy well. And ironically, this is Jane A. Robinson. I was trying to find the John A. Robinson letter. So she helped out somehow. She must have taken a photo of the painting for him. Don't know. And then they just edit it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I'll probably change my view next week, And we just want to know, I don't know why this end is loading weird right like that, but I will fix that and find out how that happened. But you can see here from 2021 all the way to 2017 that my journey of growing and learning and finding stuff out, and I did not think that my picture was the daguerreotype Joseph III talked about. I didn't even talk about that for like a year, almost a full year. Did I even know about his letter? Did I know where Joseph III lived until May 2018? But I've been making videos since July 2017. So, and then the previous eBay seller never even brought up that point. That's one of the strongest points of provenance, is that this was printed in Newark, Kendall County, Illinois, and Joseph III in the 1860s when it was printed. And Joseph III lived and was traveling to Newark, to Plano, Kendall County, Illinois. Officially lived there from 1866 to 1881, but he was traveling to Kendall County since 1860. And they did have carte de visite since the 1850s. So they could have had that style of carte de visite in the year 1860. They really could have. So I will end that there. But if you just want to see like my ability, I'll just end showing you this. This was my first outline, and just see how pixelated that was, because this app kept the same resolution of the pictures that I had, and that was one very pixelated picture, so I didn't own it yet. You got Hiram Smith. I thought that was one of him, and then I found out a few days later it really, really wasn't, and I was really disappointed, and it really perfectly from here down matched a verified picture of Joseph F. Smith. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the Spiritus picture. I'm surprised I left that on there, because I just don't know anything about it. I don't know the provenance with that at all. But it wasn't until 2018 that I really was finding out, oh, Elisha Bibbins, like, he knew Emma and his son printed my picture. Like, they knew each other. And a guy named JS meeting another JS, and just, I can just tell how young and happy Joseph III sounds, just meeting people, and just really, he was a good guy, just really kind to people, and he became the president of the reorganized church. Just, I could see him, I can just tell on that trip where he came really close to Newark, just his stories and his kindness to people, and just feeling happy and just trying to preach goodness and things like that I could see him still being in a good mood. Be like, I'm JS. He's still like a really young guy, and JS Bibbins was older, but not that much older. I'd have been like, my dad always talked about your mother. I could see this guy. He was a Methodist preacher who had lived in Newark since 1838. Before that, he was living near Scranton, Pennsylvania, and before that, he was in Harmony area when Emma was 7 and praying in the woods, and her dad caught her and said, oh my goodness, my heart is breaking, I'll allow religion in my home again. So this guy was somehow a part of religion being allowed in Emma Smith's home, who's the father of the person who printed my picture. Yeah, anyway. I didn't know any of this in the beginning, I figured things out. And so this is my vlogging journey, figuring stuff out in real time. Anyway, have a good day.